Hi, a very good evening, everyone. So, what I have decided today I'll take how to do analysis in cohort study. So, before I go and explain how to do analysis in cohort study, my apology for not uploading the videos of late, and it was due to some personal reason. But I'll make sure now from now on onwards. So I try to upload videos on a regular basis and try to make the topic simple, interesting, and easy for all of us to comprehend. Okay, so today what I'll do, I'll try and let's see how analysis in cohort study becomes very easy. So this is the topic which my experience says many of the students, whenever we talk about analysis, they say, oh, relative risk, attributable risk, population attributable risk proportions. These are the things which need to be calculated, and when it comes to calculation, we are very much dependent on different formulas. So what I'll do today, I'll try to make sure that you understand in such a way that you don't need formula. Can I calculate relative risk? Can I calculate attributable risk? Can I calculate population attributable risk without formula? And if you don't require formula, and if you can calculate, if you can understand, that makes the topic very easy. Okay, now coming to directly to the point. So as we all know, we have a framework of cohort study, and what is cohort study? It is generally prospective in design. So we have a study cohort which is exposed to certain factors, risk factors, suspected factors, and there is a other cohort which we say control cohort, which is not exposed to factors. And then after a certain period of time, since it is a prospective study, so we see how many people have developed disease either in study cohort or control cohort. So if I see this 2x2 table, what I can make out, so that if I see in a study cohort they were exposed to suspected factors, and after a certain period of time I see A have developed disease and B have not developed disease. So total study cohort happens to be A plus B. So out of A plus B, if I ask you how many people develop disease, so you will say A out of A plus B. Now if I ask you how many people develop disease in control cohort, so control cohort total happens to be C plus D, and in that C developed disease. So if I ask you how many people develop disease in control cohort which were not exposed to any risk factor, so you will say C divided by C plus D. So students, when you are doing this, which doesn't require any formula, what have you calculated? You have calculated indirectly incidence. As you know, incidence is new cases. Here you are doing a cohort study. After a certain period of time, people may develop disease. People may develop new disease, and that is called incidence. So in cohort study, it is very easy for us to calculate incidence. So in this example, what I have done and what you can do, you can easily understand. If I ask you what is the incidence in study cohort, you will say A out of A plus B. And if I ask you what is the incidence in the control cohort or non-exposed group, you will say C oblique C plus D, means C out of total people, not total people belonging in control cohort, which is C plus D. Okay. Now, so when we understand 2x2 table, so what we are trying to do ultimately, we are trying to find, is there any association between the risk factor, the suspected factor, and the disease we are studying. For example, is cigarette smoking leading to lung cancer? So this is my suspected factor, this is the disease. Is this leads to this? Yes or no? So you're trying to find the association. If yes, if there is an association, can we know what is the strength of association? If there is an association, okay, fine, then what is the strength? So these are the two things we'll try to understand. Now, before we go and try to calculate the other indicators, other measurements, what we'll do in that example, if you remember, if I ask you what is incidence in exposed group, you will say, sir, it was A oblique A plus B. And since incidence are generally expressed in 1000, so you are saying, okay, what will happen in 1000 population? So A out of A plus B and 1000, so this you have calculated incidence. Now you tell me total people, what is A plus B? This is total people involved in study cohort, right? and out of this, how many people developed disease? That was A. So A out of study cohort. If I take a quick example, suppose study cohort was 5,000 and 50 people developed disease. If I ask you, in 5,000, 50 people developed disease, how many into 2,500? You will say, sir, it's 25, just half. Similarly, so how many in 1,000? So what will you do? 50 by 5,000 into 1,000. Simple mathematics. So it will be 10. So, this is the way we calculate incidence. Incidence are generally expressed in 1,000. Now, similarly, I can also calculate incidence in non-exposed. When incidence is non-exposed, how many were control cohort? It was C plus D, if you remember, and out of that C were people who developed disease. So out of total people involved in control cohort, C was the people who developed disease. Now the only thing you have to do, you have to express in 1,000. So this I have mentioned here. Now you can calculate incidence in exposed group, you can calculate incidence in non-exposed group. Can you make a relation? Can you see whether the incidence in exposed is greater than incidence in non-exposed? If it is greater, we say it is positive association. So there is, the risk factor definitely has got an association with the disease or the outcome. If incidence in exposed is equal to incidence in non-exposed, then how will you say that the particular risk factor is causing that disease? You will not be saying, because the control cohort or those who are not exposed to risk factor is also showing the same thing. So you cannot make any association, no association. If incidence in exposed is less than incidence in non-exposed, then it is a negative association. You can think in this way: as you increase yoga and exercises, your hypertension and diabetes conditions decreases, morbidity reduces. So one is increasing, other is decreasing. So there is a negative association. So when we are trying to calculate incidence in exposed group, non-exposed group, and we are trying to identify the association, this is the way we can do. Whether the exposed group incidence is more than non-exposed, positive association. Incidence in exposed is equal to incidence in non-exposed. There is no influence of the suspected factor. So it is no association. If incidence in exposed group is less than incidence in non-exposed, then definitely there is a negative association. Students, colleagues, this will be further elucidated in the different examples which I will show. So these are the things we will talk about. Relative risk, risk difference, attributable risk, absolute risk, population attributable risk, and population attributable risk proportion. And we'll try to make a linkage so that whenever you are doing a quick revision by one slide, you can make it becomes easy. And at the end of the session, I'll definitely do that. Now let's make it simple. Let's take a hypothetical example. So I can see we have smokers, right? Those who are smoking, those who are not smoking. If I see in this, how many people are smoking? 2,000. How many people are not smoking? 1,000. After a certain period of time, I see from this table, 2 by 2 table, that out of total people who were smoking, which is 2,000, 120 people developed lung cancer. So obviously 1880 will not develop lung cancer. In 1,000, those who were not smoking, 20 developed lung cancer. So obviously 980 are those who have not developed lung cancer. Now students, you see, if I ask you what is the incidence in exposed group, so the total population is 2,000. In 2,000, how many people developed disease? 120. So if you see, if in 2,000, 120, how many in 1,000? Because as I said, we generally express incidence in 1,000. So 120 by 2,000 into 1,000, so it becomes 60. And this can be done without calculation also. Simple. In 2,000, 120, in 1,000 becomes 60. So incidence in exposed group is 60. So you don't require any formula. You don't need to learn, number of people who got disease out of total population at risk multiplied by 1,000. Don't stick to all this thing, because it is ultimately the understanding which helps you. If I ask you what is the percentage in this, you can calculate. In 2020, 120 in 100, generally we calculate percentage in 100. So in 100 how much? So you can do simple mathematics. Similarly, in 1,000, if you see those who were not smoking, 20 people developed lung cancer. So in 1020. So generally we express incidence in 1000. So we have incidence in non-exposed 20. So what we have got, incidence in exposed, we have got incidence in non-exposed. We have this 60 value, we have this 20 value. Now the common understanding says in every 1000 population who are smoking, 60 people develop lung cancer. Simple, this is the meaning. In every 1000 people who are not smoking, 20 people develop lung cancer. This inference we have drawn from this table. Now you should think, so those 1000 people who were smoking, 60 people developed lung cancer, right? 1000 people who were not smoking, 20 people developed lung cancer. Now you can think, and this 60 people, you know what they will say, that why did you develop lung cancer? You were not smoking. You were not smoking, so why did you develop lung cancer? We were smoking, so at one moment of time I can understand, oh, I smoked, so I developed lung cancer. But this 20, they were not smoking. So why did you develop lung cancer? It means that there may be some other factor. Right? There may be some other factor. Right? Now, so I know incidence in exposed now, which is 60. I know incidence in non-exposed, which is 20. So if I do a comparison in between those, I can make that, okay, in exposed group, the incidence is 3 times greater than in non-exposed group. You have taken the ratio, so it becomes 3:1. So what is this 3:1? Smokers are 3 times at a greater risk of developing lung cancer in comparison to non-smokers. So your relative risk is greater than 1, and as I have said, if it is greater than 1, there is a positive association. So in this example, there is a positive association. So I can say risk of developing lung cancer is 3 times more those who are smoking in comparison to those who are not smoking. Okay. Now, so as I said, so incidence in exposed is 60, incidence in non-exposed is 20. So these people are asking question to these people, why did you develop lung cancer? So that means, as I said, there are some other factors also. So I want to know what is the risk difference between this with regard to smoking. So what I'll do, I'll subtract from 60 to 20. I will say 40 people in 1000 will definitely develop lung cancer due to smoking. Now let it make in a simple common language. 60 people developed lung cancer due to smoking. Suppose I say, if they were not, assume that they are not smoking. If they are not smoking, based on incidence non-exposed data, I can say even if they were not smoking, 20 would have developed lung cancer because that is related to some other factor by this. So can you say now, in this 60, if I remove 20 from here, why? Because these people anyhow will develop lung cancer even if they are not smoking. So I can say 40 people is developing lung cancer definitely due to smoking. Right? So risk difference, what I do, incidence in exposed minus incidence in non-exposed. Now if you have understood this will help you to understand attributable risk. Now what is this attributable risk? So what I did, okay, in 60 I subtracted 20, so I got 40. So I am saying out of 60 who developed lung cancer due to smoking, 40 is definitely attributed to smoking, definitely 100%, this 40. So out of 60 means 40 out of 60 you can attribute to smoking. So what will you do? 40 by 60 if you're doing, and if you're taking percentage, it becomes 66.6%. What is this 66.6%? 66, now you can say that you are attributing lung cancer, and the reason for that lung cancer is smoking, 66%. And what is the other way of saying that? If you remove smoking as a risk factor, you will be able to reduce lung cancer by 66.6%. Why? Because the remaining 33.4% is due to some other reason, right? So if you remove smoking, so you will reduce the lung cancer by 66.6% in the exposed group, right? So this is attributable risk. So the formula is what we say: incidence in exposed minus incidence in non-exposed, out of incidence in exposed, and you are taking the percentage. What is this, students? This is risk difference. So if you take this example, I said 60-20, this is exposed, this is non-exposed, so you made a risk difference of 40. So out of 60, you are saying 40 will be definitely developing lung cancer due to smoking, so the percentage happens to be 60.6%, and the formula is this one. Okay, so this is my attributable risk. So as I said, 66.6% of lung cancer among smoker is due to smoking. You are attributing to smoking by 66.6%. So higher the attributable risk, suppose it is 90%, greater is the chance of reduction. If you know, think in this way. In the example which I have shown here, 66.6% is. If you remove smoking as a risk factor, you will reduce lung cancer by 66.6%. Suppose this number would have been 90%. What would I would have interpreted it? If I remove smoking as a risk factor, I will reduce lung cancer by 90%. So higher the attributable risk, greater is the possibility of eliminating the disease by eliminating the risk factors. Okay, so this is attributable risk. Now, the other important one is, what is absolute risk? What is absolute? Absolute, tell me, what is the total population in this example, students? 2,000 smokers, 1,000 non-smokers, so total population is 3,000. Out of this, how many people developed lung cancer? That is 120, it is 140, and this side it happens to be 1880 and 98, so it is happening to be 2860. Yes. So out of 3,000 population, 140 developed lung cancer. So if I say 3,000 in a population, 140 people developed lung cancer, what is the percentage? So what will you do? 140 out of 3,000 into 100. So you will get 4.67%. This is simple, a percentage. You are giving a name called absolute risk. And if you remember, if you see the formula which I have written, A plus C divided by A plus B plus C plus D into 100. Why to get into the trap of this when I can understand, okay, out of total population, which is 3,000, how many people develop lung cancer, which is 140. What is the percentage? 140 by 3,000 into 100. So you are getting 4.67%. This happens to be absolute risk. Simple. Okay. The next important indicator is population attributable risk. Already I have read attributable risk, right? Now I'll try to understand what is population attributable risk. So what is the difference between AR and PAR? The only difference is, students, P. If you remove P, it becomes AR. If you add P, it becomes population. So I want to see how much I can attribute of any risk factor in the population, not in the exposed group, in the population. So for that, let's try the same example. Let's try to calculate. If I ask you, what is the incidence in population? Population, I am saying 2,000, 1,000, so it is 3,000. Total disease lung cancer is 140. So again the same thing, in 3,000, 140, how many in 1,000? So this is my incidence in population. So I get incidence in population as I have calculated here, it is 46.6. So whether you are smoking or not smoking, total number of lung cancer in this example per 1,000 happens to be 46.6. Means for every 1,000 population, 46.6 people will develop disease. Now, incidence in population I have calculated. So the second thing which I need to do is I need to calculate incidence in non-exposed. Simple. So if I ask you what is the incidence in non-exposed group, you will say 20 out of 1000 into 1000, so it becomes 20. Now, if I ask you, can you subtract from incidence in population what? Incidence in non-exposed. So 46.6 minus 20 if you are doing, which is 26.6. So what is this? These people, now try to understand. The non-exposed group, they were not smoking. So they have developed lung cancer. So I don't know what is the reason behind. There are some other factors. So what I did, in the incidence in total population, I removed this non-exposed incidence. So I am only left with incidence in population with the attribution to smoking here. So I can say now 26.6 people in the entire population here, will develop disease, and in the entire population, not in the exposed group, and that is population attributable risk, right? So if you remove smoking, so in a simple way, if you remove smoking in the entire population, what will happen? You will reduce population attributable risk, you will reduce the lung cancer by 26.6%. So it is a better indicator than attributable risk, because in attributable risk you're getting an information about the exposed group population, but in population attributable risk, when you're calculating, you are getting information for the entire population. So you can reduce the disease incidence in the entire population if you remove the risk factor. So this is the difference between attributable risk and population attributable risk. And the same thing, now you see, incidence in population was 46 point something, incidence in non-exposed was 20. So we calculated PAR is equal to 26.6, something like this. So what is the percentage if I ask you? So out of 46.6, out of 46.6, 26.6 you are attributing to smoking. So what is the percentage? So obviously this is 56.5%. So now I get 56.5%. This we now also say as population attributable risk proportion, or generally a population attributable risk also in percentage form. So now if you see, attributable risk was 66.6%. if you remember, population attributable risk proportion or attributable risk, it is 56.5%. Now this indicator is better, because this information you are getting for only exposed group, but you are getting an information about attribution in the entire population. So I am concerned about the population, not concerned about only a particular group. So we calculate population attributable risk. Okay. Now just a question which comes normally: what is the difference between relative risk and attributable risk? And you know everything. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points I have made here. You can easily make. You don't need to remember all this. It is very easy. So what is relative risk? It is the ratio of exposed and non-exposed incidence, as you know. What is attributable risk? It is the extent to which I am attributing the suspected cause as the cause of the disease, right? So that is attributable risk. Relative risk measure the strength. If you remember, greater than 1, no is equal to less than 1, or incidence in exposed and non-exposed are equal. So that it measures the strength. Attributable risk measures the extent to which the disease can be prevented if you remove the suspected cause, right? Wait, higher the relative risk, higher is the association. Higher the attributable risk, greater is the chance in reduction of incidence of disease. Now let's take an example which I have already shared, and you can make these 3 points easy. Suppose relative risk is 20. Greater than 1 means what? smokers are 20 times at a greater risk of developing lung cancer than non-exposed. So higher the relative risk, greater is the strength of association. It measures strength, and it is the ratio of exposed and unexposed. So by this simple example, you understand these 3 points also. Let's take attributable risk 60%. It means what? If you remove smoking as a risk factor, you will reduce lung cancer by 60%. Right? So that is attribution. So you are attributing cigarette smoking as a cause of lung cancer by 60%. So you remove smoking, you will reduce lung cancer by 60%. Relative risk doesn't give any information about prevention of the disease. It only says the strength, higher the strength, lower the strength. Attributable risk gives information about prevention of the disease. When it gives information about prevention of disease, it is of public health importance. It doesn't give any information about, prevention of disease, so it is not of public health importance. Okay. Thank you. And what I'll do now, just a quick revision, students. So incidence, if you're calculating incidence in exposed group, so total number of disease out of total population at risk. Simple. You can calculate instead non-exposed also, disease out of total population not exposed. Here the population is exposed. You're taking relative risk, it is incidence in exposed, incidence in non-exposed. So you're trying to understand the strength of association, right? If it is greater than 1, it is positive. It is equal to 1, no. Less than 1, it is negative association. Now then you calculate risk difference. You are trying to subtract incidence in non-exposed, non-exposed from incidence in exposed. So you're getting risk difference. Then you're trying to calculate attributable risk. So you're trying to take this risk difference out of incidence in exposed into percentage. PAR, what you do, you're trying to take the incidence in population, and from that you're subtracting non-exposed, and if you want to put it into percentage, which is PARP, incidence population by incidence in non-exposed out of incidence in population, and you can put 100. Right? So you need to understand this point. Then there is a linkage here, then 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 is a linkage here, there is a linkage here. Right? So just revise once or twice, and I think it will be very easy to understand. And in case you have any doubt, do let me know. I'll be more than happy to elucidate the queries you have. Thank you very much. Take care, and I'll be uploading videos on a regular interval now. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.